And I'll call the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee meeting for January 13th. Roll call, please.
Tracy Flukie.
Here.
Kyle Chagot.
Here.
We're going to skip down to Dale Schmitz.
Here.
And Sharon Cup.
Here. Pledge allegiance, please, guys.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
And Kelly just snuck in.
Here she is. Hi, Kim.
Oh, hi. I know. All right, can I have a motion or any changes for the agenda for the meeting?
I motion to accept the agenda.
Motion by Dale,
I'll second it.
second by Kyle. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Actions on the minutes from the December 9th, 2024 Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee meeting. Any corrections, any changes? I said welcome motion. I'm good as well. Here you go, Kim.
I didn't see anything in particular about, I would get particular about periods and commas. So I'm going to say, I recommend,
Motion to approve.
I motion to approve. Very good.
Thank you, Dale. Is there a second, anybody?
I'll second it.
Second by Kyle. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 6, items for discussion and possible action. Consider, discuss, act on information related to the regulation of motorized bicycles, electric personal assisted devices, ATVs, and other vehicles, including neighborhood electric vehicles, scooters, etc. 6A.
All right, so in your packet is the draft ordinance that hopefully covers the elements that were discussed at the last meeting. So for all the talk and conversation we had, it looks like a really simple amendment. It's kind of a bigger deal than what the draft ordinance does. So how we have it broken down is, I guess I'm going to tackle it a few different ways. First and foremost, under section 7-270, which is definitions under our chapter 7, which is traffic and vehicles, we've added the definitions as defined by Wisconsin state statutes of a bicycle. So previous to this amendment, the proposed amendment, we had identified the definition of a bicycle. It just so happened to coincidentally match the definition of Wisconsin state statute. But I thought, let's just clean it up. We'll eliminate our definition and define it by statute. We did not have a definition for an electric bicycle, an electric personal assisted mobility device, or an electric scooter. So we've done the same where we've added those definitions as defined under Wisconsin state statute.
Can I ask you a question, Joel? So you're just going to list it in that manner, or will you have the definition then after that? Or are you just going to say it's as defined in Wisconsin state statute, so you will not put the definition behind that?
And the reason for that is if statutes get amended or changed, then we would need to change our code by just defining it by statute. From a law enforcement standpoint, it's real easy for them. They just pull that snippet of code and then they can click right to it and then pull it up into the track system where they can, analyze or issue citation.
Does the statute number change frequently, or is that something that's pretty consistent, like the statute 340.01 for electric bikes?
They may, so we do.
So then you're going to have to keep track of that and maybe have to change that.
Yeah, there's a provision within Chapter 7 that's not a part of this amendment that identifies that we adopt all of Section 346 and 340 by code reference. So if there are changes in the interim, be interrelated.
Okay. That's good. Thank you.
So that's first and foremost. So we definitely wanted to add those definitions under statutory law. So we've done that. The second one I'll get to is bicycles. So if you look under the second page of the draft ordinance, we're under section 7, 277, which deals with the operation of a bicycle under our code. So the first one I'll kind of point out is under paragraph B1. There is a reference, and to Tracy's point, when this code provision was written, it was written that we adopted Wisconsin statutes 346.77 to 346.81. They have since added a section in their Wisconsin statutes for 346.82. So we're adding that extra paragraph to note what it did is it essentially renumerated sections of the statutory code when they added electric bicycles to it. So 346.82 doesn't address electric bicycles. It's another paragraph that they enumerated, all of them. So we picked up an extra paragraph to address electric bicycles, okay? And by statute, electric bicycles are treated exactly the same way that ordinary bicycles are. So by adding that added paragraph, you're adopting by statutory code that same rights. So an electric bicycle has the same rights and responsibilities that a regular bicycle has under Wisconsin state law. You're looking like you might have a question, so I was going to pause there for a second.
No, not
Okay.
here. I'm
Okay, good. Then the next item under the bicycle section there, so I am kind of jumping around a little bit because I want to tackle the bicycles first, is under paragraph B3. This was a motion that was made at the last committee meeting to eliminate the right of a bicyclist to operate or be ridden on a public sidewalk in the village. So as of right now, Wisconsin state law disallows bicyclists from operating on sidewalks unless permitted by the local jurisdiction. So currently, under our current code, not the draft one, we do allow bicycles to be ridden on public sidewalks in the village, so long as they yield the right of way to a pedestrian and exercise due care and caution and provide an audible signal when passing another bicycle rider or pedestrian.
I'm struggling with striking that.
Sure.
I firmly disagree with it, as you all know.
Yeah, and so one really quick thing on that note. So this strikes it based on the recommendation that came from last month's meeting. If this provision were to stay in, meaning it would no longer be stricken as it's written in the draft ordinance, it currently would allow bicyclists and e-bikes then to ride on the sidewalks. So remember, we're not calling out the differentiation between bicyclists and e-bikes.
Mhm.
And that's up to the committee to make that recommendation. I just want to point that out, that if we were to disallow e-bikes from sidewalks, but allow bicyclists to stay on sidewalks, we would have to add a different paragraph then to implement that.
What I did is talk to a lot of people who live in the village and just ask them their opinion on this. And I think people are thinking mostly of children and young people, and just weren't sure we needed to take that out. But I'm most interested, I said this at the last meeting that you were able, I'm most interested in your opinion on this.
I strongly feel like they should be able to ride on sidewalks. I don't know.
So I listened to the replay of last month's meeting, and there was a lot of discussion at that meeting regarding that. And in the state of Wisconsin, the rights and responsibilities for driving a car vary by age. You have to be 16. So is it possible, or that we could say you can be on the sidewalk with a bike if you're under 8, 9, 6, 5, just pick an age? Or
I mean, I think the enforcement side of it, I just feel like if our police officers aren't truly going to enforce it, I feel like we shouldn't have it as a rule of one. I also I get the age thing, but I think then you have to judge it. I also picture we have a lot of residents at Woodside in our independent living that ride their bikes on the sidewalks, and then technically they wouldn't be able to do that. And I just feel like if we haven't had an issue with it, I don't know why we would start to restrict moving. Again, I just look at our committee as like, we're supposed to get people out doing things. To me, this is going to restrict that more. I feel like it does the opposite of what we're doing. I get there's different types of cyclists, like avid cyclists, all the way to people like me that are not as much of one, besides more riding with my kids. But I feel like I don't understand why we would want to restrict anything. I guess if it hasn't been a problem, we haven't had lots of issues with it within our municipality. I feel like you got that feedback. I'll be honest, when I saw the notes from last time, I was like, hell or high water, I will be at the meeting next time to make my point known. Again, if anyone disagrees, that's totally fine. I respect that, but I want to say it because, again, I think I am one of the few people that does have kids in the district and is representing a different group that other than have sometimes been represented on the committee.
Well, and Sharon, I've even heard you say, right, like your comfort level is you prefer a sidewalk, right? I mean.
And that's ultimately what it comes down to, is that that's where people are comfortable. If we take that away, then they're just not going to do it at all. And that's what I don't want to see, is people not getting.
Right, and if our goal is education and then we go and educate children that they can't ride on the sidewalk, what do? We're going to have them biking on Oneida Street? Like, that's the one that really gets me, which I realize, I know it's not the only sidewalk in the village, but those kids are way more safer on that sidewalk than they are on Oneida Street. And there are lots of them that come and go to practice and whatever all summer and some bike to school every morning.
So I guess looking at the discussion last time, it seemed to me, and maybe I'm wrong, and correct me if I am, but it seemed to be this originated not with bicyclists, but with some of the power assist, or not even assist, but the scooters and the look like bicycles, but you don't have to pedal and it goes 20 miles an hour. So I think based on those things are included in the definition of a bicycle. So either we have to carve those out and restrict those somehow, or we have to restrict everybody from riding a bicycle on the sidewalk.
So maybe I'll bring this full circle. When you look at the code and you go back to that kind of first section of the draft ordinance that's under 239, that's where we get into things like motorized bicycles, electric personal assistive devices, altering vehicles, toy vehicles, things of that nature. So in the paragraph A, we added electric scooter as now defined under state statute as being disallowed from operating on any part of a sidewalk or recreational trail. That would not be an electric bicycle. So an electric bicycle is different by definition from a motor bicycle. So just so we're clear on that an electric bicycle is defined very differently than a motorbike. So motorbike, motorcycle, or anything to that extent would still be disallowed from operating on a sidewalk or trail. The electric scooter is added to that list just by definition, because we had just scooters before. We added the electric scooters. So I just want to kind of point that out just for a point of clarification that all of those other types of devices, electric or gas powered or other powered motored vehicles of any type, would be disallowed from operating on the sidewalk. Only of the electric bicycle, if that paragraph is retained within the code, would be allowed on sidewalks.
So, am I interrupting? Oh, I think you've been waiting. You go.
No, I was just saying, one of the things that came up at our last meeting that, some of you were not at was a lot of our adjacent communities do not allow bicycles on sidewalks. So it was a consistency thing as well. And I know what you're saying, Jessica, but riding on a sidewalk, especially for an adult cyclist, is less safe than riding on the road. And when you think of our community, how many sidewalks do we have in our community? The sidewalks we've been talking about is Oneida Street, Holmgren, Cormier. Okay, those are some of the big ones. So there aren't our collectors and arterials. Okay, so on our higher speed roads maybe, but when you go into all of our neighborhoods, there's very few sidewalks. Okay, so they're all residential. So not allowing on the sidewalk in our community isn't as big a deal as it is in the community that has tons of sidewalks in everywhere. You know what I mean? In all the residential areas. So obviously, most parents are not going to let their child bicycle on Oneida Street. Would you say?
Or probably Cormier.
Or Cormier, or maybe at Holmgren. Probably not maybe at Holmgren. They're not going to be out there. So, I just
Do you mean at all? Because I see kids biking. Who I was picturing when I wonder about this is all the kids I see going to practice on Cormier, coming up the sidewalk. I see kids on bikes.
Yeah.
have to go on Oneida if you live over by Pioneer.
If the weather is where you could ride a bike, I see kids on Cormier on those sidewalks biking.
Well, and maybe there's certain sidewalks in the community, we say, some communities do that. These sidewalks you can bike on. This one you can't, this one you can't, these you can't. That's another way to look at it, but, it just, it's, like I said, I understand what you're saying, but it is safer for someone to be on the road versus on sidewalk. And I know that's
I think it's hard though, even with that, because it's safer, but based on probably like someone that's like a cyclist like yourself, versus like, because how, for data wise, how are they getting that? Because to know the ratios of how many people are out with their kids on a sidewalk, you can go off of numbers of accidents, but if there's 5 times more people riding it up, like just around their block on a sidewalk, that data is not in there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like it's hard to get a true representation of that. And that's where I think, since in the village, we haven't had a lot of issues with this, that's where I'm like, why change it or touch it? Like, if we were having a lot of issues with accidents because people are riding their bikes on a sidewalk, absolutely, then we need to be addressing that. But there hasn't been an issue. And I'm just of the like, keep it as clean as possible. Because again, I think to create something that then is never going to be enforced is also something I struggle with, especially if we're trying to educate. I don't want to be the person that's going to be out there saying like, don't ride your bike on the sidewalk. Meanwhile, I'm going to tell my kids when they come down to a Rockers game, they sure as heck are still riding their bike on the sidewalk. Like, like I feel like if we're going to do it, we better be ready to enforce it as well. So I don't want to promote something that I wouldn't stand behind, if that makes sense either. So I think keeping it as clean as possible
I
makes
don't think that was the intent originally. And of course, we moved this on because you missed the first meeting. I said, this is pretty important, right? Then you missed the second one.
Yep.
But I don't think that was the intent. I think the intent was exactly what she's saying is we had learned that your surrounding communities, and it's every community surrounding us, does not allow people to ride on the sidewalk with their bike. And the thought was that we're probably not going to enforce it, but at least you have it there in case you had the bad apple that was abusing the system on the sidewalk, like anything, like on the road, like any place else. Because I totally follow what you're saying. I see a lot of kids that don't have a sidewalk where I live.
Right.
They have to ride the road, right? There's not a sidewalk. And there's a lot of kids that go to Pioneer and they seem to be okay. Now, it's not as busy, right, as this section here by far. There isn't even a good comparison. But I think that's where the original intent came from, because Green Bay, and then the thought was, well, if we allow them here and they're traveling, because we want to connect, right? Our goal is to connect to all these other cities. I think the idea was that, okay, now we allow them and all of a sudden they're in Green Bay and now they don't allow them. I don't know if they enforce it either, Jessica, so I can't respond to that.
Right.
I don't know how you could. I mean,
They probably don't enforce it anywhere. I mean, when you think about it, whether bikes, if there's bicyclists riding counterflow on the road with dark clothes on at night, do you think any of the officers are stopping them? No. They just don't see it. They're busy. They don't see, or they don't see it. They're not trained to see that thing. So, they're not, it's not any different than there's people riding on sidewalk. You think they're gonna stop? They're stopping.
Well, I have a sidewalk that I back out every time I leave my garage.
Yes.
And I learned to look down the sidewalk because there's so much traffic on Cormier Road. I'm ignoring the sidewalk and I'm looking for that car that's coming in either direction.
Yep.
So if someone's zipping along the sidewalk on a bike, they're used to say, well, I can just keep going. I don't have to slow down for every driveway I cross.
Right.
So that's the hazard. Every driveway is a conflict point, and drivers backing out aren't necessarily watching.
You would have,
And when I go down Packerland, I ride on the road. I don't ride on that trail because there's too many times I've come to an intersection and a car pulls right up, and I have to stop or just broadside that car. So I don't ride on that trail. I ride on the road.
So I want to go back to electric bikes in a minute, but first to that point, I am not convinced there's a difference between a bike coming down the road and a bike coming down the sidewalk in terms of my awareness of them. If I think I have to be
I can give you lots of studies on that.
You could, but I've been driving a very long time.
Well,
Yeah.
like I say, I've learned to watch what's going on the sidewalk. And so you do too, but a lot of people don't.
But I'm saying where a bike is. I'm not sure that 2 to 4 feet difference makes it. I think people are either watching for bikes or they're not. And I also want to go back to e-bikes because I know we could feel a little alarmed at the idea of them. I don't know how many people in this room have ridden them, and I do not intend to be condescending, but the people who are riding them pay a lot of money for them. So it's not like knuckleheaded 10-year-olds that are zooming around 30 miles an hour on e-bikes. It's adults, probably very similar to me, and they can ride them with no assist or little assist. So I also, before we become overly concerned with the e-bike and the speed, it's not typically people going 50 miles an hour on and down a sidewalk. That's just not how people ride e-bikes, bikes with assist.
Well, that's not how they ride them yet. And most people are going to be the riders that you described. But I see more and more, and there's more places to buy them, and they're being more prevalent. And the scooters are becoming more prevalent. So I think I like seeing this so we can get ahead of the problem rather than address it after it becomes a problem.
And I feel this goes counter to the safety of the kids in our community, and I'm bothered by the idea of striking it.
So sounds like we may be at somewhat, to the voting members of this group, maybe at an impasse, right? So I'll throw this up. This is a policy decision that the village has to make. It's not necessarily one that staff is going to advocate for one way or the other, right? So we're looking for direction from you so that we can present a final copy to the board. But I'll throw up this as something as food for thought. Both elements, whether you keep the paragraph in the code, so let's use that as the scenario. We keep the paragraph in the code and we allow bicyclists and e-bikes to ride on the site. What I think the commitment of this group would be is that clearly there's some education that has to be provided to users, right? If you're going to operate a bicycle on a sidewalk, you need to be a little bit more conscientious of those conflict points as you ride, right? Those driveways, those intersections, so on and so forth, because that's where you could broadside into a car. You have to really kind of pay attention to that, so that education is required. Conversely, if you were to keep the strike in the paragraph and required by law people to ride on the road, we now have to educate people why it is safer for them to be on the road, right? And so we have to convince them that under their own perception, they are safer to operate on the road, and here's how you do it, right? So we need to provide education to that regard, okay? So if we were to look at those as being equal tasks, right? Education, one way or the other, 2 points. One, which is going to be easier to convince or overcome so that the operator of the bicycle is operating in a safe manner, either telling you to ride on the road or ride on the sidewalk. 2, perceptions are oftentimes a reality for people. So how are you going to overcome some of those perceptions to get them to realize that?
That's personal truth. Then,
Right?
You know.
Yep. So and you hear it here at the table, right? Everybody
Yeah,
has their own personal experience. And that is,
Yeah.
I don't know that you're going to convince anyone else at this table that your personal experience is invalid. So
To go back to the comment Dale made earlier, there's a lot of kids ride on a lot of streets that don't have sidewalks, and they seem to know how to do it. So whether you can ride on sidewalks sometimes or not, kids have to learn to ride on the road, and they are learning to ride on the road for the most part. So, I guess.
Yeah, because there's not sidewalks anywhere.
I guess
everywhere, so
if
they
we
have
had
to-
sidewalks in every block in the village, that would be one thing, but because we have so few sidewalks, they have to learn to ride on the road anyway. And they have to learn to be careful of cars and what to watch for, just like 16-year-old driver has to learn what to watch for.
So I think my thought was, from an education standpoint, you still have to provide education one way or the other. So which is going to be a little bit more accomplishable, if you will, if that's even a word, right? Which one can you accomplish? And then look at it from the standpoint of, we recognize that in all likelihood, if that provision is stricken, it's likely not to be enforced. But to someone's point that they made earlier, why have that provision in the code if you're not going to enforce it, right? So why create a legal standing or a legal issue for an element that you're not going to actively enforce, right?
Well, there is that goes on right now, because there's a speed limit on every street in Ashwaubenon, and I exceed every speed limit every,
Now we know where to look.
Yeah.
It's 2 miles, 5 miles, if it's 30, I'm going 35, 34, and I've never gotten a speeding ticket doing that. I've gotten speeding tickets going 20 over, but not going 5 over.
Sure. Come on. So I guess, having said what Joel's saying, I mean, I don't know if there's any other discussion anybody has or something that really you need to share with the group. Otherwise, maybe if there's a motion, someone feels comfortable putting a motion for it.
I just have one more thing, and then I'll make the motion.
Okay.
It doesn't stop here. The village board is going to have the final say on this. So we're making a recommendation. So there will potentially be voices at that village board meeting that are going to talk to the trustees and, so there's, it doesn't stop here, I guess.
Right.
My feeling is we adopt this or recommend that the board adopt this, but it doesn't, like I say, it doesn't necessarily stop here.
So your motion, is that a motion, Kyle?
Yeah, I move that
The ordinance as written, is that what you're saying? Right, or no? So
as the changes as proposed, we recommend those to the village board.
Okay.
So make your second, I'll just ask.
Does
I just
anybody have a
point of
second on
clarification.
that? I will second that.
Okay, so point of clarification, because we spent a great deal of time debating the bicycle concern. I just want to confirm that the e-scooter issue is something that's agreeable to the group. So just to confirm, electric scooters would not be allowed on sidewalks or trails.
I still don't necessarily agree with that either, but I also understand the other side of that. But because again, it's another thing that I think.
Yeah, I think Brown County allows what?
Scooters
or bikes? Scooters.
Scooters are not allowed.
Bicycles would be allowed on trails.
No.
You're correct.
Yeah, the bikes I don't.
Bikes
Yeah,
are allowed,
bikes are.
scooters are not.
And then this
Just-
ordinance, we're saying that bicycles and electric bicycles can go on our trails and our parks and stuff, but not scooters. Okay.
That was my only point of clarification, because I
Thank
know
you.
we didn't talk about that in great detail.
Is there a benefit to separating out two things in our motion?
I wouldn't unless you're planning on creating a condition where, like, if electric scooters were going to be permissible on trails but not sidewalks, we would need to call that out in a separate paragraph. Right now, they're not allowed under the current draft on sidewalks or trails.
People are very using on the trails sometimes. Your kids. They're using on the trails. But it's all,
Again, how enforceable is it?
how
right?
enforceable is it, right? And by the time anyone calls public safety and they get over there, it's going to be more, if there's an accident, is someone going to get cited during the course of an accident versus the act of actually just thinking about it.
On the other hand, if somebody's consistently abusive with that piece of equipment, it gives them an opportunity, and if they do it enough, somebody will know who they are. And it gives them an opportunity to at least have a discussion with them. That's the only part we talked about in the past, was it gives at least them an opportunity, if somebody's gonna be the bad apple, to have
Yeah,
something.
I'm not arguing the point.
Yeah, no, I know you're not. And that's why the group works well together, because you are gonna have differences of opinion. I mean, otherwise you're not a group.
Right.
Something's wrong.
Mhm.
So I appreciate the fact that everybody's bringing up their opinion, because that doesn't always happen, you know, we're kind of quiet sometimes, and I'm the same way. Where at least and that's exactly why I said we should really move this further, because I think, but,
That's how you learn from each other, by discussing,
Yeah.
hearing other people's.
but I'm total, because I've done this. When you talk about the side, I'm going to take Packerland as a perfect example, and you have the trail, and I'll be pulling out of McDonald's parking lot or someplace. I will pull out up to the sidewalk and sometimes not think till the last minute to look down. And there they can fly pretty fast, right? It's not like you're in the city. They can cruise pretty good on that. I mean, oh my gosh, what if there was a biker coming down this thing and I'm pulling right out over it? Because I'm trying to get out so that I can get across the lanes and get into the other lane. So I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I've been there myself and went, oh my gosh, if somebody's coming, he would hit me. He would have broadside.
Yeah, especially a counterflow bicyclist, because if you're turning and you only have
Exactly.
conflict from one direction, you're not looking the other direction and you're not even gonna see them. So that's what's scary about it. And that's on the road, and that's why your bicyclists on the road always rides with traffic, so that they're not in an unexpected position. So, okay, is there any other discussion? The motion is basically to approve the ordinance as you see in your document.
Forwarded to the board.
To recommend.
And recommend it, and yes, forward it to village board. Any other discussion or questions on that? Otherwise, I would call for all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Two no's, sorry. Two. So it was a 4-2?
We're passing it, striking this paragraph. That bicycles will be allowed or not allowed?
Not.
Yeah, I don't want them allowed. I want them on the,
Yeah, so you're voting.
You want them on the
you're
road?
voting-
on the sidewalk.
Okay, so then you would vote against this then? Okay, so then it was 3-3, correct?
Yep.
So tie goes to what? Okay,
So a tie vote fails.
tie vote fails,
I don't
okay.
want 'em-
So then with,
You
then
got a
have
couple
another
options,
motion.
is you could, what I would recommend is do a couple different things. One, you can make a motion to forward no recommendation to the village board because of a failing vote.
Yep.
Or come up with a motion that would get you to an approvable motion. I don't know that this group,
No, I
Is it
think
going
we
to
need
get
to
there?
do a
But I
motion.
also don't think us continue to debate it. I think if we move
Yeah.
it to the board, and
Yeah.
ultimately they're gonna decide anyways, so I think it's okay that we all agree to disagree.
Yep.
But I also think we're gonna continue to agree to disagree, so we might as well move it to the next level, because even if we finally agree, I don't know that they'll agree.
We
So
can't
that is
swing
my
your,
motion.
But where's our,
can't swing your
we have an odd number.
It's gonna cost
for-
so Leroy is determined to resign his position on the committee. So we are presently sitting at an even number of members. That's why we have 6 people here
Oh, this, I thought we had
So
someone said no.
Signing up.
today. Yeah, I don't think she is going to be appointed until, I'm guessing, for the February or March meeting, because it's got to go through the appointment process. So I think Mary is bringing some name forward to village board at the end of the month. I'm not sure.
I don't know, maybe it was resigned. So, but, okay, so Jessica made a motion that we're going to send this on to village board without a recommendation, basically.
That would.
Is that correct, Jessica?
Yes.
Okay,
So
does anybody want to set, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do we ask them for feedback then, or
Or
will we
They
get
make the
feedback?
decision,
No, the board will just.
or don't make the decision. Doesn't go to, we don't have
I'm
to
not-
then.
We won't
The
find
board,
out.
We don't have anything, no.
yeah, the board could say, you know what, we wanted a firm decision from the committee, we're gonna refer it back to you,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
they'll just,
say,
They'll
we're
take
gonna shoot this.
I don't see the board not taking action.
No.
You go to the meeting that they discuss it and act as citizens.
Yeah, I would be a little bit cautious of that. You could certainly do whatever you want, but just remember that the motion that you make today, so if you forward the motion saying that we're not providing a recommendation, you're affirming that position, right? So if you were to go to the committee as a member, or go to the board as a member of the committee and advocate on your personal behalf, that is distinctly different than the motion from the
That
committee.
doesn't reflect well on the committee.
Exactly, yeah. I would just be cautious of that.
I mean, the other option would be, wait till there's another member. I guess I'm just trying to be respectful of the fact that I feel like we've discussed, like we have a lot of meetings where we keep going over the same things. And we can push it to another one, hoping for another member, which I think if we know someone's gonna be coming on would be a potential option. But I just don't want it to be where we're gonna sit and, because again, I think it's okay that we respectfully all disagree, but if we're all comfortable with that, then I don't see that changing. Then to not keep moving forward also seems, I don't know.
Especially when the village board has the ultimate
Right.
decision. So I agree. We just need to
Move on.
move on and let them decide. And
Second her motion.
sure, I'll second their motion.
Okay, Kim did, but no, okay, so I seconded the
Oh, she
motion. Did you? I thought you seconded it.
I don't know.
I don't know either, okay, so
I have a lot of words already, so Kyle seconded it.
excuse me, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Okay, motion carried, it's going to village board with no recommendation from vice from this pedestrian committee, thank you. And if I can get my.
And I'll
Here we will.
I'll confirm with the board that really the issue where there was lack of commitment from the committee, or consensus, if you will, I should say, is on the issue of bicycles on sidewalks. The other provisions of the code, I think the committee was in agreement on the consensus as to what was appropriate.
Yeah, I was curious if we could send an explanation along with it, but if you're there, that's,
Yeah. the
I don't want them
committee's
to
agreeable
think that
that's-
we didn't take time to consider it.
Right. It was a tie vote on the recommendation, so it ultimately failed. But the reason for that is there was a disagreement amongst members, or lack of consensus, I should say, amongst the members on the sidewalk.
Okay, anything else on that? I'll also go ahead to B, consider act, discuss act on a request to install safety improvements for pedestrian crossings along Packerland.
Okay, this one is pretty basic, so just a brief update. So Brian, Rickard, and I had reached out to Chris Hardy. Chris Hardy is the new highway commissioner at Brown County. Packerland is a county truck highway, so if we were to install a crosswalk on Packerland Drive, we would need to get approval from Brown County to do so. So the question that came to the committee last month was, what does it take to essentially get approval from the county? So first and foremost, number one thing is you have to get a permit. So the county would require a permit. Now, what would be the conditions of acquiring that permit? Essentially, we would need to identify the location in which the crosswalk would occur. So the committee would say West Paulson, Carroll, Comanche, whatever. And then provide a report or some data that would support the need or that shows the purpose of that crosswalk. So if we have crash data, if we have, our pedestrian plan or something that shows a pedestrian pathway or something to that regard, I think that would be necessary. And then they would need to review that information and then also concur that the need, the location, and everything meets their expectations. So they have final say and authority to determine that crosswalk would get placed.
Do they have final authority then and Joe on the design of it too? Like what it would look like and our
They would have-
B's and hawk signal or
They would
whatever?
have final say in the design.
They
They would tell us though that we have to design it. So, but they would have to approve the design. Like, we don't get to come up with anything. And I've had that now with Chris, with the previous highway commissioner, where they say, well, you have to design something, but it has to be approvable by us. And then we pay to have it designed 3 different times and then the design.
agreed to
doesn't get-
disagree on it.
Yeah, we've had those issues before. I can't say that about Chris because I haven't had a project with him yet.
How did the one on the south end at Skylark get put in?
Yeah, that one, that was before Chris's time.
Oh, actually, it was.
And
That just kinda happened.
Just happened.
Was that village did it or
We did
county
not.
did it? Or how did that even come about that all of a sudden?
Don't even
It went
know how
in.
it showed up.
We don't know.
Because we don't want something like that because that does nothing. That doesn't come out as hazard. much of
So
anything.
on the southeast corner, I wanted to do a curb cut so that people that were on the road had access to jump onto the trail. Okay, so we put the curb cut in, and then next year, literally the next year, the crossing happened, crosswalk signs were put up. wasn't initiated by us. Like it just happened.
Maybe not.
I mean, maybe Doug did
I
something.
thought he did, but I don't remember for sure.
But it wasn't,
Signs there.
and that probably
That's the
needed,
problem.
what I was gonna
That's
say.
the problem. Nobody, and there's no crosswalk there. There's no lines. on the road.
probably, yeah.
It's just kind of silly, but, okay, so really, Ron County has to prove it. Permit is needed, we identify location of crossing, we have to provide a report or data support the need for crossing, and then they review and say whether that site is good or the design is okay.
We would have to design it as part of the permit request. So they would have, in order for them to issue the permit, they would have to see our design.
It is really interesting to drive around this village and then the city and look at the different approaches to that. It really is. So you look at the Hawk, whatever that is called, and then to look at the brightly lit one, and then to look at where they put the refuge in the middle, and traffic slows a little because they know they have to go around something. It's just very interesting to look at all the approaches.
So at this point, if the committee wants to provide a recommendation as to the location or a scope of area you want us to look at, if we were to hire a consultant, then we would need that basic information. So if we're fixed on West Paulson and that's the only place that we want to recommend, then that gives us a scope. If we're looking at, let's compare West Paulson and Carroll, then that's our scope. If we're looking at, let's just analyze the corridor between, let's say, Comanche to just south of West Paulson, that's our scope. That's really what we need as a staff. And then from there, if we need to hire outside consultation to do the analysis and data collection, now we have a scope. We can go to a consultant, we can develop what an actual budget would be, and then we could provide something either in the budget, or we can look at how that fits within our existing budget and get board approval to do that. That would be kind of the next steps in the process. We just really need to know from a staff what that scope looks like.
When we drew it out last time, because I remember us like figuring out all the different ways on there, what was it, Comanche to Packerland that because I remember we were talking about like one road had the sidewalks, one was a straight shot, and then we were gonna have to add something. And I remember we had a lot of like really good discussion around it, but I can't remember like what was the total parameter that we were looking
I
at.
don't think we went all the way down Packerland at all. I think we stayed up further north, because that's where the.
Was that at the meeting
request is coming from.
last time?
I'm
No, was
confused
it?
a little bit.
Well, the third one-
Packerland is the one
Or
crossing.
sorry,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
What's the third one you said? You said
West Paulson.
yes.
Yes.
To
So West Paulson is the one that's been requested by our plans, and I think we've talked about that to some extent. This is my fault, but I brought up the idea of West Paulson isn't really that connecting street to your other accommodations. Like, because Carroll eventually turns into Hanson.
Yes.
Hanson has sidewalks. If you're looking at making those eventual connections, does it make sense to look at Carroll? It was more or less, have you thought through this as to what your overall neighborhood connections are?
And I think that's what I was thinking when we talked about that day. We talked about like almost Oneida Street someday all the way to Packerland having a connecting path. So I think in the scope, whatever covers the largest area to look at.
South of West Paulson,
Yeah.
that you had suggested.
Yeah.
So I don't walk that neighborhood. Are there that many people looking to cross the street to get to the path? Is it?
That's the request, they wanted to have a petition with
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
30, 40
Signatures
people or something like that. that
Okay, so
want-
I guess
want
that was
to
my
see
next question.
crossing.
Is it just one person
No,
or is it?
Well, it's
No,
the neighborhood.
it's a full neighborhood and
They-
they walk the trail a lot. 'cause
they want the safe crossing to be able to get to the, they're not saying we want it here, we want it here, we want it here. They're just saying we safely
need
want to move from
something.
our neighborhood over to that trail. That's their request.
So as well as Paulson, is that got little sidewalks right on the corners?
None of the connecting streets to Packerland have
That's
sidewalks.
part of the problem.
No, we
That
just
was,
hear
that was
what's
my
flooded.
concern is if we start installing improvements there,
Yeah.
if we can answer to our constituents why we're doing what we're doing, that's fine. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as to why did you put it at West Paulson versus Carroll versus Comanche?
That's what I
I
think we were
That's the only one that's really a true intersection where you go across, there's streets going both ways. All the rest of them, you run into the path or you run into buildings. Is that,
When you,
I'm looking at it
when you
now.
cross Paulson, there's no residences back there. It's all
It's
industrial
businesses.
Right.
Yeah, it's the metal.
Corner at the gas.
Yeah, yeah. But the other ones run straight into Packerland and go nowhere.
They know there's not a road on the other side.
So,
But you're ultimately looking to get people to the trail, right?
Yep.
That's your design, so who cares if there's not a road on the other side? It doesn't matter, they're just getting to the trail, that's all we're looking at. I think we're better off looking at saying this area to this area. Consultant decides which is the best road. I know there's concerns about, Hanson, the, Carroll, yeah. With the sidewalk and, continuing, so that'd be great. But look at the crossings on Cormier that we put in. Santa Barbara, or Shady, neither of them have sidewalks. They come from a residential area.
And they're used.
They're
all the
used.
time.
They're used. So I see what you're saying, Joel, and that's ideally, but trying to get sidewalks to a residential area in this community is like, you might as well forget it, because it's very difficult. So for that to prohibit a site, I think, is not a good idea, because we've done it on Cormier, and they're getting used, and people are safely using them coming out of a residential.
I suspect that most people, if they cross from the neighborhood to the trail, to walk the trail for recreational purposes, are walking south versus north. So West Paulson is probably the preferred route, because that gets them to a section of trail that is not as conflicted as those areas on the north end with all the driveways.
Tunnels and all that.
So that's, to them, it's more of a recreational kind of leisure exercise type thing versus I'm avoiding cars and traffic. So that's probably why West Paulson is the preferred route, because they're just trying to get to their point, their destination, point A and point B. So they'll meander through the neighborhood to get to West Paulson, to get to Packerland to head south versus going down Carroll to get to Packerland.
So it's Comanche, Carroll, West Paulson, correct?
Those are the-
And that right, or am I backwards?
Those are the northern
Yeah.
three.
Those are the northern three. So what if we recommended a consultant looks at Comanche, Carroll, and West Paulson?
Yeah.
Give us an idea, maybe even look at design or whatever, put the information together for Brown County.
West
So-
Paulson, north 172.
Yes.
So should we ask the county, tell them what our plans are, and they may say, we can have these two, but we don't want Comanche, because it's so, we should find out
I
if,
suspect that they will.
Yeah.
They will too.
I think the DOT would have some say in that because of its proximity.
so I guess I would check with them for, let's not consider something they're gonna automatically reject.
I mean, the only good thing about Comanche, besides that it's too close to 172, is there's an island in the middle of that. There is a space.
Yeah, that's where the.
And that,
road
there is
starts.
not at the other two,
That's a good point.
but it's still, I think it's too close ones, but just me, but I may be totally all wet. So, I don't know, so I have mixed on that, because an island is a nice thing to have too, so you only look in one direction on travel versus two. But
And I think either the other two are closer to the residences, to the population.
yeah, the speed drops. The speed drops 30 miles per hour at close to West Paul, or just north of West Paulson?
Yeah, it's 30 from West Paulson north to 172.
Yeah.
Once you get south of West Paulson, it goes to 35.
So the speed's a little less.
I would
But on
say
Comanche,
there's a
there's
whole lot of
businesses on there. When you get the other two, it's all residents.
I'm sorry, say it again. Kyle.
When, on Comanche, if you go east, there's a lot of businesses on that street, especially on the north side.
Yeah.
You get to the other two, is residences on both sides.
Right.
So I'm going to throw out something, and I'm sure sometimes consultants have different views on things. So the shortest, the average person is going to take the path of least resistance. So unless you're living in the south part of that neighborhood, no one's going to want to walk north across to go south. They're going to take the quickest way, and that's going to be
Carroll or.
Carroll
West.
Paulson.
Paulson, will probably be Paulson. I can't see people walking north to cross to go south. They're going to say, well, I've got an intersection right here, I'm just going to, doesn't matter if it has a crosswalk or not.
No, agreed, good
Yep.
point.
Yep.
Good point. Because I do see people go across there once in a while, but boy, I'll tell you, that's
Yeah, that's.
taking your life in your hands.
It
on that
is
road.
Frogger,
I'll say
definitely.
this also, if
Just
you're,
like
if you're,
this is
if you're walking, biking notwithstanding, but if you're walking, would you rather walk on Carroll to get to Packerland? Or would you rather walk on Paulson to get to Packerland? Again, I'm just going me personally.
Yeah.
I would probably want to walk on Paulson.
Yep.
Only because it's less busy
Mhm.
and I'm on foot. Where Carroll's more of a straight shot through for cars. And so it's like, well, if I'm able to take one or the other course of piece, then I'm going to walk on Paulson because it's less busy for me.
And the map that Joel showed at the last meeting indicates that Carroll is, what was it, Connector Street, or it was marked in yellow and the other ones were, so.
So urban.
I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, it's a good point.
It's doing that, so whatever. Credence that holds.
I can't imagine, I can't believe they.
I don't
allow
either,
that.
I don't either,
Yeah,
but.
that's like going
I
down
guess you close.
Babcock in the first block, you're dangerous with your car, much less being on a bicycle or walking.
All right, is there any other questions or discussion? Otherwise, if someone wanted to make a motion in regard to this, where we want this to go forward and how we want it to go forward.
Well, Joel, did you say they need something to give them a parameter, like say from Paulson?
We
West
just need a
Paulson.
scope for where we're proposing, and then we can put together, or through consultation, the information necessary for the county to grant us.
Then I would do the West Paulson to 172, because we're not gonna go any further south. That wouldn't make any sense to go further south than West Paulson.
Could we also ask them, Joel, I know this is part of it, but to look at that question that they put in at Skylark and why that's there and if that can be improved or taken out or whatever, because right now it's dangerous. It's dumb to be there really. It's not doing anything, so maybe we can ask them to look at that as well, just to say, how did this, and Chris is new, so he'll, I don't know, but, yeah.
It was here when I got here, that's what, that's always
It
been
is
there.
there, I don't know
You want
why.
a crossing there too?
Pardon me?
Can we, or should we?
I think it'd be great to have a crossing
I say,
outside because, yeah, that's
So
why
what
I
you're,
have
so what
to
you're
maybe doing
suggesting is
both.
maybe just having it more
yeah, look at
clearly
both
marked.
and, yeah.
So right now, it's just signed.
Yeah,
It has, yeah, it
but it's
doesn't have,
not striped.
doesn't have stripes, just has a few signs and they're the regular, they're not even the bright yellow, there's no head sights, there's no
It would
nothing.
make a nice loop. I mean, if you're gonna,
It'd be
like,
nice to have
I
a
walk
look at-
that a lot, either
Yeah,
Bull Run
I'd rather
or
have
Skylark
than get
and
rid of,
cross,
you
and
know,
then I
yeah,
cross that.
exactly.
I cross at West Paulson, just
Yeah.
saying,
Mhm.
whether I should or
Yeah,
not.
but I think we could say that with that loop, it makes sense to look at both
Right.
and try to have good crossing in
Then,
both those areas for people to make that,
'Cause that's a
that
long
loop. And it's a
stretch.
huge residential area
It
that
is.
benefits from that
Mhm.
circle there.
Yeah, that's east of that trail.
Mhm.
So, I mean, and at least in my neck of the woods, you would be walking down to, Glory. Things, Lobby,
Where are you?
where there's lights is not that big a deal.
Yeah,
But still, you know, so you do have a safe crossing there and you have lights, but I just think Skylark is just so poorly
Do you
signed.
do that? Do you walk through the park?
Pardon me?
Do you walk through the park then?
I do sometimes.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
The one
I
that's
would, I would never do that. I would just
Okay.
cross at Skylark or Polo Run.
after the meeting,
But
I'll
I-
tell you a story about the parkage question.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, any other questions or anything? Otherwise, if someone would want to make a motion in regard to the Packerland crossing. Proposed Packerland crossing.
Well, we know it's going to the Brown County, right? So I would motion that we go from West Folsom to 172 as a parameter, and then let them help us with guidance.
Yeah, site design, whatever.
Yep.
Sounds like they want design, but. Okay, any questions on that motion? So I was saying as our recommendation would be that they look from West Paulson up to 172 for a crossing.
I'd like to discuss it just a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
We won't like
Well,
it.
can we get a second first? I'm sorry, before discussion. Second or that?
I'll second it.
Second one, Pat, okay, go ahead.
If we give them all the weight of 172 and they're not thinking about what we think they're gonna think about and they recommend something closer to 172, we are not gonna like that. I heard this whole group just say, no,
Why don't we
not
just
down
go
there.
between
Just go between.
Carroll or West Folsom? Those are your two options.
So
One
like
would-
West Paulson, do you wanna go as far as Comanche? Like, do you
Or
wanna
just
bring
say
it over?
Carroll, West Folsom, is that what you're?
I'm just thinking, we're going to send it, we're gonna disregard what they recommend if for some crazy reason.
Yeah,
That's a
They
valid
say
point.
Comanche.
172.
Weirder things have happened. So,
That's ought to be what you would want Comanche, that's right there, in the middle of the traffic.
Okay,
So West Paulson,
Carol.
Carol.
Okay, so you're gonna amend your motion to
I'll
say
amend
just
my
West,
motion.
look at West Paulson and Carroll.
I'll
Kyle, you're
still
okay with
second it.
that? You're
Yeah.
second? Okay, so the motion is to look at West Paulson and Carroll as potential crossing on the south end of Packerland
Mhm.
for a pedestrian crossing. Any other questions or discussion on that? Okay, then I would call for all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Joel, can we just add, or will you just ask them about the southern crossing as well? Just,
Yep.
or maybe that can even come back to us and say, okay, we're just concerned or whatever about that.
since this is just a mystery,
Yes, yeah, can we figure out how this came to be?
like hypothetically.
Yeah.
What would happen if we just went and striped it and made it what we wanted, because we don't know whose it is and who's gonna.
Well, we know whose it is. It's the counties. It's like, you can't run stripes across the county road. I'm thinking,
We could do it
you
at night.
can't.
I know. I feel like Brian's tricky.
I mean, I
I
have
have a way to
paint.
get this done.
Unless you get a big paint roll and go in the middle of the night.
Mhm.
They sell it, it could happen. We don't know where the sign came
It
from.
might not be very reflective.
if somebody is in that intersection, yeah, I know you're not an officer, but who has the right if they're crossing? Because I see a lot of people do cross there when I'm biking over that
Doesn't
way. I
have,
cross Packerland from Skyline.
You know, it's kind of funny, but you've got a new highway commissioner. Can't you just say, hey, the cross, looks like the crosswalk paint is worn
That's
off.
what I'm saying, just saying, that should be done.
Yeah.
They put the signs up. They're
Yeah.
the ones that have
That's
to
what
put
I'm
the signs
saying.
up. So shouldn't they be striping it?
Right,
I think the striping is worn off. Can you put
right,
out another
just
vote?
complete the cross.
right, finish it, you started it, finish it.
I would
Alright.
need to confirm whether or not the lanes themselves are required to create a legal crosswalk.
You know,
So pedestrians are able to cross at an intersection without a crosswalk on them.
on the pavement.
So I would need to confirm through, as I was trying to pull up the MUTCD, because you'll have the assembly, which is the signage, and then the lane markings. In certain applications, I would suspect that that assembly is incorrect because it has the down arrow on it.
Yes.
If it didn't have that down arrow on it, and then the signs were located, let's say, so many feet from the intersection, they would be legal then, because it's serving as a warning device more than a marked delineated crossing location. As we looked that up with the school crossing on Pioneer to the high school. So you'd have different assemblies based on applications. One's a warning, one's a delineated demarcation of where that crossing is, and so on.
Not on Pioneer High School. No.
Now, Pioneer.
Yeah, I know what you, yeah, I figured that's what you mean. I mean, most people are very careful anyways, they're not gonna take on the cars. No way. That's what's nice about being at Skyline. You got enough distance where you got visibility. Or so, to see. But, okay, thanks.
All right, anything else I was going to see? Consider, discuss, act on the 2025 comprehensive bicycle and pedestrian plan update. Sounds like Brown County, that Joel had told us at our last meeting, Brown County was gonna take that on. And maybe Joel can go into it for the kickoff meeting at our February meeting. Have some from Brown County come in.
Yep, so I think, and Rex can certainly kick into this conversation too. So Devin Yoder, who's the senior planner from Brown County, is the one that was been designated to assist us in
Devin, what you said?
Devin, yep, Devin Yogurt. As we talked about, I think at our last meeting, Cole Runge is retiring. Not that Cole would have been the one that would have assisted us, it would have been Devin to begin. So Devin has been in communication with Rex, Aaron, and myself to some degree in kicking off that effort. So they're looking to come to this group in February with kind of more or less, and I'll let Rex kind of tie into it, but just kind of talk about schedule.
It's more of a schedule or timeline of how this is going to progress.
Right. In a typical planning environment of this nature, what we generally do, is, especially with consultants, is they do a lot of the legwork behind the scenes. Then they bring back kind of their draft work to the committee, and then the committee provides feedback on the draft components of the plan. And then at the end, ultimately, the committee would provide a final recommendation of approval that would then go to village board. So from this committee standpoint, its involvement will be at the committee level. The draft documents would come back. There would be some feedback that way. What we're looking for in February for Devin is just a confirmation of schedule. What we also want to talk about is public input, so that input isn't just necessarily provided by committee, but from the general public. There's a variety of avenues that we can take, or we have taken in other planning efforts, whether it be citizen surveys, public input sessions, open houses, workshops, things of that nature. So have that in your mind as well, because that would be a question that comes back next month, is what does public input look like as part of this planning effort? And then kind of what that timeline looks like for completion, right? So that's really what we're hoping to accomplish next month at the February.
That's good.
So any initial questions or feedback? I think Rex, Aaron, myself have a meeting with them in a couple of weeks to talk through some things, and then just kind of make sure that at least, because there's obviously going to be some lifting by Brown County, but they're going to rely heavily on data and information that we provide, and I just want to make sure that from a staff perspective, where we have enough time to accomplish that within the schedule that's being out. We have the first to half of the second quarter of this year, we're going to be pretty busy. So I don't know how much time we're going to have to really tackle some heavy duty lifting on data collection and things like that. Hopefully by mid-May we'll be open up.
Who's gonna be the staff liaison for this?
There'll probably be Rex and or Aaron will be the staff liaison for it, so.
I'm definitely gone at that February meeting, but I'll catch up with you the notes on it.
All right.
And Kim, you're also going next month, is that what you said?
You're going to? You guys going somewhere warm? Maybe you can go there. Okay. All right, so that sounds great. So we'll just have an update at that meeting. So think about some of the, maybe a lot of the public input type stuff. I mean, there's some great ideas people come up with on different things to do to really encourage people to get involved and have some say in it.
See if I can, I've done surveys in the past for the biking ped plan updates. So maybe I can dig out what our past survey was and improve that just for the group to take a look at to see what changes they may or may not like to make, if they still want, if you still want to do a survey.
No, that's a good idea. Any questions on that, you guys? Otherwise, we'll get moving on that, which is exciting to get a new plan and update the plan, because a lot of things have changed.
For sure.
And we'll have that next month. Items for next agenda. Things that I had was a kickoff meeting for what we just talked about, like pet plan update. The South Crossing on Packerland and Skylark, if you get any feedback on that, maybe we could put that on the agenda. Anything else that we, I don't know, you guys?
I didn't know if it may or may not be appropriate for this committee, but I guess I was just thinking with the draft coming to town, that is one thing I was wondering is, are we gonna have, like, is there some type of, I know you guys are doing all sorts of planning for moving people throughout the corridor, but I didn't know if like there's something that you guys would want help from the committee on, or if there's anything or an update sometime before the draft is like how we're pushing people through all of this. 'Cause I get lots of
Who wants to volunteer?
I get lots of questions about
Who
it.
wants to volunteer? I can get you a yellow vest, and you
Are you
can
gonna
be
do
a community liaison.
I'm essentially gonna be living down here for that time, because I'm assuming I'll have no staff, so I'm happy to also wear a draft.
Yeah, the NFL will be looking for substantial volunteers and paid staff. I think most of these people would be paid, but what they really want to do is get community members engaged primarily there's going to be a lot of traffic checkpoints in and around the campus, and they would prefer them to be people from the community. So when somebody comes up and says, I can't go here, I have to get rerouted, where do I go?
They can,
Versus having somebody from Tennessee that's contracted up here providing the security.
Right.
They want somebody there that's from the community that can help
Mhm.
steer them in the right direction. So there will be
Yeah.
plenty of opportunities to wear a yellow vest and be a part of that.
Would that be appropriate, Joel, to put on our next agenda to get an
I can get an
update?
update on the
just
NFL
to-
draft, yeah. I would think
Okay.
by then we would be pretty close to making some like public information on street closures.
I'm even thinking more along the lines of like, for us,
I mean,
again, we
yeah.
talk about education, they're putting things out like, just, do we want to be putting anything out about like giving recommendations to people where they'll be flowing, how they'll be flowing, all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
Because all of a sudden, I feel like after the first year, I feel like everyone has gone crazy, like, it's gonna be here any minute, and it kind of is, but
yeah.
I'm like, I just feel like there's a lot of unanswered questions, like,
Well,
So-
and let our residents know
I
that.
can only
also,
imagine
too.
how you feel.
Yeah, that must- Okay, so if we could, anything you think is appropriate, Joel?
I'll just put
Put
in
on
a
there.
draft update and you can get an
And
idea
then
of street
maybe there's a
closures.
whole bunch of volunteers in here that will wanna
There you
work and get paid to stand on a corner.
I do believe that they do pay people, so
There you
there's
go.
an opportunity for
Make a few
volunteers
bucks.
and people.
There are a lot of Oaks and Haven residents that really want to volunteer for the draft.
Oh,
They asked me that.
oh, really? Oh,
That would be a good job for them though, stand in one
Yes.
spot and tell people where to go.
all right, any other items for the next agenda, anybody? Otherwise, motion to adjourn. In order.
One second.
Who made the
Did
motion?
Who made the
last-
motion?
Last meeting?
All motion.
Did you have
Thanks,
a
Jessica.
request for like a update on the Argonne Trail or anything like that? I thought the last meeting we didn't go
What
over
was that?
department reports.
We did last month, but I don't think we had anything for this month.
Yeah,
But we can
it's-
provide another update.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why don't-
Joel,
why don't we do
because I
that?
asked about it and
Yeah,
Joel
I think
mentioned
we
you
did.
put the crusher dust down 3 inches or.
Let's, we'll put 2025 project updates.
That's
So
what I was gonna say, Public Works too, if Ryan could maybe say these are the streets we're doing, that would be good to know too, and then we can look at that. Okay, so we're gonna say Public Works updates,
Department
and,
updates.
like the pedestrian or project updates.
okay.
Are we adjourned?
All right, I don't know, do we have a second?
I had a Jessica and a Sharon. Yep.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. There we go. Thank you, everybody. Have a good
Joel,
one.
I have